Now let's dive a little deeper now into that Russian jet striking a U.S. drone over the Black Sea. Moscow says the drone was flying in an area declared off limits by Russia. And they're also now saying they want to get their hands on that drone. It's part of what they call a special military operation in Ukraine, the verbiage Russia is using for its unjust invasion of that country. And U.S. officials not buying that explanation. They call it a brazen violation of international law.
Several times before the collision, the Su-27s dumped fuel on and flew in front of the MQ-9 in a reckless and unprofessional manner. This incident demonstrates a lack of competence in addition to being unsafe and unprofessional.
Now, the incident also marks for the first time since the height of the Cold War that a U.S. aircraft was brought down after being hit by a Russian warplane. Let's talk about this now with our panel of experts. First with us, former senior advisor to the U.S. envoy for Iran, Lynn Kodakovsky. Also with us, Gordon Chang, author of The Great U.S.-China Tech War. And third, and last but not least, retired U.S. Army Lieutenant Colonel Tony Shaffer. Gentlemen, great to have you all here.
Thank you.
Thanks, John.
All right, Tony, first to you on this.
Sure.
It's unclear, I guess, officially if this was an accident, but when you have a Russian fighter jet dumping fuel on an American aircraft, flying in front of it in a very aggressive way, I mean, do we really call this an accident?
No, it was no accident, John. This was dumping the fuel on the aircraft was the tactical equivalent of a dog raising its leg on a fire hydrant. This was meant to send a message, and the message is, we, the Russians, are not happy with what you're doing. And obviously, they've declared this airspace to be controlled. We don't recognize that. So, frankly, I'm surprised something like this hasn't happened sooner. It's very clear, though, much like during the Cold War, we have to figure out a way of dealing with it without expanding and being more provocative. So there has to be a response, but that response can't be, as Lindsey Graham said, let's start shooting down planes randomly. But there has to be some focused response to this antagonism.
And what would you advise that response to be, Tony?
So there's a number of places right now we are in close contact with the Russians. One of those places is Syria. We need to remind the Russians that there are things that we can do together to be helpful and some things that we cannot. And there are other ships out there in the ocean that we know where they're at. I would not say what we're going to do, but I would do something that clearly is meant to send a message like we're not going to be pushed around. Again, I don't want to get us into a shooting fight, but you cannot back down to a bully, and a bully will only expand his antagonism if you don't do something in response. So there's some things we could do. The specifics, I think the Pentagon can figure out which ones to go after.
Gordon, I wanted to ask you about this incident in relationship to President Xi Jinping planning to visit Moscow. You know, he's publicly called for calm and peace in that conflict. What do you think he says to Vladimir Putin about the ongoing escalations?
I think Xi Jinping probably gives him pretty much close to a blank check. We really don't know, of course. I'm sure the Chinese are not happy that the Russians are less than competent in pursuing the war. But we have seen China ramp up its support for the Russians. And we get to remember, this will be the 40th in-person chat between Putin and Xi Jinping. And that shows the closeness of ties. Now, we may think that Xi Jinping will say this or that, but the point is, these two countries are working very closely together. They've effectively formed an alliance. They are the core of a new Cold War, and they're the opponents. Well,
you know, Lynn, the meeting with President Xi and President Putin, the planned meeting with President Zelenskyy, comes on the heels of China brokering this peace deal with Saudi Arabia and Iran. Give us your thoughts on China's intention to be this great broker of peace and really the world power in a position where the United States used to be.
Well, you're absolutely right. But first, the most important news of the day, John, is it's my parents' 54th anniversary. So I want to give them a
point of personal privilege. And let's give a round of applause. Any couple that can make it 50 years, God bless them. And I love to inject something happy as we talk about the prospect of World War III. So that's great. So kudos to your parents, Lynn. And also, you know, it's meaningful because I know you grew up going to Odessa in Ukraine, and I know that's deeply personal to you as well. So congratulations to your parents. But let's talk about this peace deal that China seems to want to broker. And do you think it's possible?
Well, thank you very much. And I think what we're witnessing here with China stepping into the Middle East, China becoming a more relevant player on the world stage, is national security malpractice by the Biden administration. Now, I'm sure we can all agree that the Chinese Communist Party is the foremost threat to the United States and the free world. So by definition, empowering the Chinese Communist Party to have a much bigger impact on the world stage than they did just a few years ago is dangerous to our national security. As far as the Iran-Saudi deal is concerned, I'm sure Saudis don't trust the Iranians or the Chinese. I don't know if the deal is actually going to pan out in the long term. Because of those reasons, I think the Iranians can't help themselves, and they'll end up shooting something at the Saudi oil facilities at some point. The Chinese are interested in free flow of oil, but they can't be trusted either. So I don't have high hopes for this, but what it does indicate is when the United States, by the Biden administration, steps back and allows China to step in, they will do so. Mm-hmm. And that, by definition, is bad for our national security.
Well, the indication, based on what happened in the previous administration, is that the Saudis would rather work with the United States. But if the United States would rather work with Iran, Saudi Arabia has no choice but to work closer with China and Russia and other countries as well. And that's kind of the situation we find ourselves in, unfortunately. Great insight from all of you guys. Thank you so much. Lynn Khodorkovsky, Gordon Chang, and Lieutenant Colonel Tony Shaffer. Gentlemen, we'll see you soon.